You done working for now, Andres? So we can work?
You guys just go ahead. I'm not saying I'm not. I wasn't gonna. That's what I was like. I'm not gonna open. That's Justin's job usually.
Usually. But I mean, if you're still bitching at whoops.
I think we were 30
We're
seconds.
not
in.
admitting.
Oh shit! It's a
Wait.
minute.
What? I think it just aired. I don't know what just happened, but hopefully everything's fine.
Yes, it erred. So,
I think the counter just started over though. It's
at 55, 56.
no, I see it at 21.
And 1 minute for me. So,
Yeah,
okay, mine is errored.
hopefully
Whatever.
Hopefully the recording's good.
This is a professional podcast.
Yeah. Well, we pay people money for software.
Yes, we have, and it now seems to be erroring. Never seen that one before. Right, but today, talking about other serious people that have no money, and None of the Ninth, they're all broke.
Yeah, it was like authors or.
I was thinking of like Kira not being able to afford her cigarettes and not even be able to go get groceries, and I'm not having that argument twice.
Yes. Finally, it's been a month and a half of us reading, and we can finally talk about the third book, so that we could wait 1 to 2 years for the conclusion. So, how very exciting!
Yes, that's how book industry goes. We need to wait for books to be written.
This is how time normally passes. Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Unacceptable.
I agree. Right. So with Nona, everything's different, right? That's the way it seems to happen with every book.
Well, it's time skip, because that is also one of the things she likes to do.
It's only 6 months. As time skips go, that's really small.
I mean, wasn't Harrow the same? So, well,
actually, I think so Harrow took place over the course of 9 months, but I think the time skip was only like a month or two, if that. Yeah, it was not very long, but because of what she had done to her brain, and then the convalescence, and then that, like, it wasn't, because they had to leave the system really quickly because they're worried about resurrection beasts. Speaking of, number 7 is still a problem.
Yeah.
And he has a name now, Varun the Eater. He's giant, and he's a big blue thing in the sky of the planet, and he makes a whole bunch of people crazy. But if they are crazy, that means that they're necromancers, and that means that they die because they're on the Blood of Eden planet. It's called New Row or something, and it's a lot of chaos. It's a lot of people who've been resettled, and there's like 20 different groups of people that are there, and they don't like each other very much, but they like the zombies less.
Yeah.
Took me way too long to realize that zombies was a euphemism for necromancers.
Right.
Or synonym, or what's the word? Is it both? Can both work?
Yeah.
Both of those words, like.
Well, and I mean, zombies is just mostly for the ninth house, I think, because necromancers are wizards, but zombies are also like zombies. I
thought there was the 6th house that was on the planet generally, and serving cohorts.
Right, but there's the bunker, which takes like the first third of or so of the book. That the 9 houses had a presence on here, notwithstanding the 6th house that was basically being sieged, until Iante shows up with the other one. I can't remember the ridiculous name. So
Kiriona.
Yeah, there you go.
Right. So yeah, we'll get there. I think the general history of this is a planet that's on the outskirts of the Empire, that as they have thanergetically flipped other planets, the population needs to be moved because they're not thanergetic, and they need to go to another thalergy planet. And that's how there's been resettlement after resettlement, and they happen every few years to people as the Empire is expanding, continuously expanding. And that's how you have tons of groups of people that don't speak each other's language, that don't necessarily like each other. They just might have a common enemy on a planet that probably doesn't have enough resources or ways to get resources. And it seems to be a kind of harsh desert planet in general. So it's hard to live in, and the fact that they had to cover up from the like various gases or the wind and the sandstorms. We talk about not having.
I thought a chunk of that was because of Varun, though, because Varun also gives off a radiation that was problematic. So,
and that's that happens through the light system. It seems to be like what Varun is giving off affects necromancers and affects their brain specifically, and so they had to cover their eyes and make themselves blind if they're going to survive at all. And it doesn't seem to work very well. But when they're leaving the apartment and they put on a bunch of masks and hoods and all things like that, it's the kind of thing that you do in a sci-fi desert planet. Of just because it's a harsh desert, right, you need to cover it up. Slightly different things, but same purposes.
Nona and her crew, though, that seemed to be as much because of blending in, than it being truly functional for them. But for like the locals, like if you looked at Varun directly, seemed to be a problem. It seemed to be giving off radiation. It wasn't entirely clear to me. Like it might have been a desert planet in the first place, but like there were additional bad effects, from it being in low orbit. So,
So Varun should only be hurting a necromancer. That's especially if one's doing necromancy. And so anyone normal should be fine. But it is a giant blue monster that's in the sky, and it is bringing heralds with it. And they worry about that type of, it is going to try to eat the planet. What does that mean? They're worried about it. But
theoretically,
the normal people up until that happens should only just be afraid if there's a giant blue thing in the sky. So the people that we have, and they're not worried about any normal damage of, say, sandstorms or even probably dehydration. We've got Nona, who heals from everything super fast, even above a lictor, but she is 6 months old. She's getting to her 6-month birthday, and she's excited, and she wants a party, and invites all the dogs. We have Camilla and Palamides in one body switching off, because after Harrow had found Palamides, and it's like, oh, you're here, you're alive, and Camilla somehow he's taking a ride in Camilla's body, and they have these sideways conversations by writing things down or a voice recorder somehow to try to be acting, and they're trying to save the 6th house that left the 9-house system to go to this planet, and now they are held hostage by Blood of Eden.
And small detail, the 6th house was an installation, presumably in orbit around Mercury or otherwise very close to the sun. It was a space station, and they moved it.
Yes.
So
the
small
whole
detail,
space station.
Yeah,
and it's I don't think people have really explained to anyone except for inside the 6th house how they did that, except for the fact it must have taken.
They do.
Oh wait, no, there was a moment of talking about the different steelies, like 500 and some steelies.
Yeah, I think Camila tells Iante, because she's like, how did you do that? That must have taken like hundreds of steelies. And then she gives her like the exact number. So it might have been
550 something 3 or something, because after that number, deleterious effects start happening, and Iante had expected it needed to happen in the 600s. And I don't know, does the steelies help with distance, or do they help with mass, or both?
Right. And I think, just to clarify, I think they said obelisks, because obelisks are like a catalyst for the steelies or something like that. So, but in any case.
Maybe. So the obelisks are like waypoints left in space, I think. And then the steelies might be on the ships to let them travel.
And somehow, they got it to work. We just get a number, and that they did use their FTL to move the freaking space station. So,
Yeah. The brief conversations we have about how the necromantic ships work, it's strange. And I think they run on fuel of blood, but it needs to be a proper mix of thalargy, thanergy, blood. And if it's too much thalargy, it might clog up an engine or something, as Corona was describing a shuttle that she had seen from, it's like several decades old, it's an older version that they haven't seen anymore, and she's just been a nerd because there was a guy that ignored her, and therefore she wanted to chase after him. Everything that she can't have, she wants, including people. Let's see. Other characters that we've got is Pyrrha, who's inside Gideon the First's body, running around, and she's not used to his teeth yet, and she's quite annoyed that she has to shave every day, and apparently twice a day if she wants it to go away. But Pyrrha's quite a fun character. She's kind of like a sassy Bond woman, and that the way that Tamsin had described her is that she was a Bond woman MILF. And she's clearly some form of intelligence kind of detective cop, because she talked about like how do you withstand torture and how do you get information, and like all the code words and the safe passages and where to go if something bad happens.
She ran the department, so
the bureau. That's our main crew, and then we have a bunch of kids at a school for, I don't know, it seems like all ages.
Kids confirmed.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't say good character, does it?
Yeah. No, this part of the book was wildly annoying to me, but mostly just because I was like, we're up here playing with, like the God King Emperor, and we've got his lictors, and then we've got children. And it was like, I swear to science, like if the children come in and save the day, like what are we even doing here? And I mean, they had plot relevant things to add, right? Like the children just happened to be in the right place at the right time is what it kind of worked out to be. But yeah, like going through her 39 friends is what it felt like, and there was probably like 8 of them or whatever. But it was like, and then this one's called Hot Sauce, and this one's just called Kevin, because that's funny. Because after you've met Hot Sauce and
Born in the Morning,
Honesty,
Beautiful
Born
Ruby,
in the Morning,
Honesty, it's only like 5.
Then we've got Kevin, because that's British humor for you, so, or Kiwi in this case, but still, like.
I mean, how about when it's the reveal on why Hot Sauce is called Hot Sauce?
Because she likes it.
Because she likes hot sauce,
right? Which is, for everybody else's benefit, it's an ironic twist because she's also burned, right? So it's like, oh, does it relate to her burns in any way or something like that? Nope, she just likes a lot of hot sauce. So
spicy food is the best. I kind of agree.
Yeah.
But then so Nona has a weird quirk in that she can speak any language if she can see the people's mouths as they're talking. There's something very important about, she has to see their faces make the sounds, and then she can make her own face make the same shapes to make the sounds, and can speak in all languages, which is helpful because Cam, Plamades, and Pyrrha can only speak what they call house.
I actually got the impression that it's not so much that she's like, she can even like when there's someone like just screaming incoherently, she can still understand exactly what they want to say.
Right.
That's just I think one more than significant
character. Yeah. Well, it becomes wildly significant because Deuteros, right? So Deuteros has been driven insane by Varun, but it turns out that it's more like Varun is using her as a conduit and talking, and everybody else hears incoherent screaming, but Nona actually hears what she's saying. And so, you get a scene early on setting up that she can understand Deuteros, but you don't understand that not everybody else can't until later when she's like, oh yeah, I was having a conversation. They were like with the shrieking woman, and it turns out they were having a conversation the whole time. So.
Or at least, I don't think Nona was saying anything back, but Judith was screaming of like, where is my green thing? And it's so painful. And when Nona asked, like, what was she saying when we walked into the room? And then like Crown and Clement were like, she wasn't saying anything because she was just screaming incoherently.
Right.
Nona cannot read, but she can speak all languages.
Things that I've missed, Alex. You must know now. What these like all the conversations they had, they were super cryptic.
Oh, very cryptic. So Judith is in some way being possessed by Varun. Varun and all of the resurrection beasts in general are angry and in pain for having been murdered planets. And they're angry and they want vengeance against presumably John, and they're looking for John or maybe Electo. I'm not sure. So it could have been not even a real thing that they're going after the lictors, because I think they're looking for what they recognize as themselves, which is Nona. What Nona is now in John. This is all very confusing. But when they say that, like, I'm in pain and I want to do a lot of vengeance-y things in the second conversation quite later, then they keep repeating, I want my green thing. And then they call Nona a salt creature. And she loves salt water. She wants to go play in the beach, and the salt water makes her feel good. And she talks about her dreams, and she's in the good water, and it feels good. Because Nona's a planet. Nona was Earth. Nona is Electo, and Electo was the planet.
70% water, right? So, kind of makes sense.
And so when they're talking about the green thing, the first thing I had thought of was like, they're talking about vegetation and life that had been, that maybe they had either known it from being around Earth, because these are the resurrection beasts, presumably of the rest of the solar system. And they're angry about what had happened and in pain, and they're destroying everything in their path out of vengeance to get back to John.
I'm not sure what the green thing is.
It's the only thing I can think of is that they're mad that the thalurgy was taken away, that the life force. We'll find out, I assume. Maybe not in this book.
Which planets has we haven't been to all of them, or like really know, but like there's not really much life. Like, we found some bacteria on Mars.
Well, there was a Mars installation by the what?
I just looked up Varun because it was bugging me. So Varun means water god, which is probably where it gets conjoined to Saturn, right? So because Saturn is Poseidon, is the water god. So
Varun, Saturn is Roman, so is Varun Greek?
I'm not sure. I mean, because Poseidon was the Greek god of water.
Oh, right.
It's just, this is a baby name meaning site, so it's not like it's
if you go on those deep, I haven't really. I just listened to the books and talked to you guys about it, right? But this, from what I understand, like if you go on a deep dive, like on all the names and shit, there's like I think it's pretty well thought out.
She certainly makes choices with a lot of consideration.
Yeah, she very, very much does the research, but then plucks that directly, right? So it's like like, okay, she's either well read or well researched or something like that. But I mean, it's like throwing Hercules into a story. Like that's what some of these names are basically. What was the zombie guy from Gideon the Ninth? The seventh house, right?
Protozolaus Eptima.
Yeah, like his name is just like stolen from mythology, right? Like in most of them are at the end of the day, right?
Right. Dulcinea was a very on the nose one. Like you can see that in the first episode of The Expanse was named Dulcinea, and I noticed that like months apart.
Right.
Because
that's where I heard it before.
Yeah, the name is basically the name of a damsel in distress that you need to go save.
Right. But specifically from oh my god, my brain today. Yeah, unfortunately it was tea today. Windmills, right? Like, why can't I think of the dude's name?
Quixote, Don Quixote.
Yeah. So because that's the lift right there, right? Isn't it?
Yeah.
So, which is why it overlaps with the Expanse, because they get the Rocinante, which wasn't that was his horse, right? They mixed it up in the Expanse because they named the ship Rocinante after his horse, but then they paint her on the ship, but her name was Dulcinea. Like, I think they actually quibble about it, like in the episode, but it was just like whatever.
Okay. About the Expanse. I don't remember. There was a woman on the Rocinante, and I don't remember who it was supposed to be, but the ship that the girl that went missing was called Dulcinea, the one that Miller was obsessed with going to find.
Gotcha.
So yeah,
that probably clued him in to do that. But yeah, Rocinante was his horse. So, but yeah,
Cervantes.
Anyway,
that's the author name.
There you go. Yeah. So So she does a lot of stuff like that, right? So if you're reading it and if you're interested, it's very easy to research it because you could just plug it in and then So Varun is a Vedic god, so Hindu,
Vedic.
India,
Got it.
So yeah, so I don't have a huge background there, but I recognize the name and stuff, and I've been meaning to look it up for a while.
Takes the form that blue orb, right? Like, I mean, what color is Saturn? Doesn't it have isn't it quite?
I mean, it's probably
Uranus,
brown, but
is that Uranus? Oh, fuck,
I think Saturn is kind of brownish. Jupiter is more reddish brown. The Uranus Uranus and Neptune are the ones that are really blue. Both of them.
Okay.
Now that's gonna bug me too. Hold on.
The power of Google will find answers eventually.
Not the colorization, but because you said Neptune, and I was just like, wait a minute, I might have screwed up. So what was Saturn supposed to be the god of? Yeah.
Neptune's the god of water, right?
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah. Tell me what he was in charge of. Okay, so whatever. Maybe it was Neptune then, but...
but Varun is named after water, and he's blue, and he's up in the sky, and... So the description that we had gotten of the resurrection beast and Harrow, they were all very crazy and weird and... I don't know, Dark Soulsy, which I love.
Eldritch.
Eldritch Dark Souls, because of one of them was just a gigantic head made up of other heads, and then it ate everything, and the other one was made up of teeth or something, and weird fish creatures.
There's probably some correlations you can make to those descriptions to the planets that they are, if you really want to.
Maybe, but I don't know. When Varun was attacking the Mithraeum in Harrow, there was a lot of bugs. That was the heralds. Heralds were the shapes of gigantic bugs, and that's what Gideon was trying to fight in Harrow's body, and lost thumbs too. So now that Varun is there, it's something that the planet kind of knows that it's going to die, or at least maybe some people know and other people are just very antsy, but they are also on some form of lockdown by the 9 houses. And at best, there's going to be another resettlement, and they'll move everyone off the planet to somewhere else. But then they get the transmission. There's a video stream, and we get to see Anthe and Naberius say, "You must turn over every one of the houses, and especially Harrow Harkon the Chesimus." And it's like, who is that? Because Nona doesn't know, because they're trying not to tell her who the people that she might be. They think that she is either Harrow or Gideon that has forgotten something, and there's hints in either which way.
Both. So it's also a theory they have, right?
Right, but she's not necromantic. She can heal a whole bunch. She can't read at all. Not a single. She can kind of count marks, but anytime she tries to learn to read, it's just complete nonsense to her. But on the other side, she can speak all the language to the point that they ask her, "Is Born in the Morning's name really Born in the Morning?" And she just has to state, "That's how I hear it." And there's another time when
which is an interesting detail, right? Because it's some of the kids' names that are wonky in the book might actually be a translation,
right? I had seen someone on the subreddit say that Beautiful Ruby might have been Rubio, as just a masculine version of the name Ruby. Okay, that can make sense, whatever that version is. But there's another point when Harrow was asking, I think, Hot Sauce about "Is Born in the Morning okay?" or something like that, and then she says, Hot Sauce says back to her a different name, but Nona hears it as Born in the Morning is fine.
Right.
And then Nona quite cares about the dog Noodle, the dog which you can see right there. It's hard to do that reversed, but he's got 6 legs, and he's a good boy. And anyone who cares,
he's on the front cover, isn't he?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you were pointing to the spine.
And he is the goodest, the bestest of boys.
He's fine. He's not as good as Mouse, in my opinion, but he has 2 extra legs, so that counts for something.
In that world, he's the goodest and bestest.
And for anyone who cares, the dog survives to the end. There's no damage being done to the dog, except for he gets a little bit scared at loud noises.
Good. I was very concerned about that when I was reading it.
Apparently, there's interviews that Tamsin Muir said, it's fine. Dog is fine. Everything's good to the dog.
People, you guys got skewed everything sometimes when it comes to animals, especially. So
sometimes, and of all the dreams that Nona has, and she's constantly trying to describe, she's in the good water. She's like, she sees a face, and there's like the hands are holding her, but they're her hands, but there's someone else's hands, and it's a painted face. And what do they mean painted face? Okay, it was a picture face that they had tried to draw a picture of, and it looks like be somebody at least in the skull painted mask face. Congratulations, you have a meat pizza. It's better than salad pizza.
At those dream sequences, I couldn't really figure out if, because we see John telling a story to Nona, or Harrow. Actually, we know it seems like it's Harrow.
Well, that's where it's another thing that's slightly confusing, because every John chapter starts with like, in the dream something else, this was happening, and they're doing this, and they're basically walking around New Zealand.
Yeah,
and he refers to her by name once or twice, even in the early parts, that it is Harrow. And Harrow is responding very little, but she repeatedly says, I still love you, like Harrow would, because she loves God.
She also says Lord, like Harrow would.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But he's also treating her as if she is Electo, because she asks, is this where you hurt me? And no, we've got to do more in the story, and then we'll get to the point where I hurt you. And so he, in this dream sequence, it's Harrow is certainly the one there being put into the position as if it was Electo, which is the planet that he had murdered. And he's treating her as both. And up until the end, when it's definitely Harrow and she wants to find out more information. But we do get a ton of information from the John chapters of what happened to the planet that caused the...
He's a super unreliable narrator, and it's even pointed out...
He is a fucking liar.
Yeah. It's even pointed out that the story he is telling is, like, not exactly true, because he's like, but didn't you say that X person died before this? And he's like, oh, does it matter?
Right.
Like, he switched it around, probably on purpose, because it made him look way better, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I mean, there's a ton of post book speculation about all of that too. That it's like, a lot of the stuff that the like Augustine and
Mercy
Morn are pissed off about isn't actually even from pre-resurrection. That it's entirely likely, I mean, first of all, 10,000 years of new drama, but he might have resurrected them and, you know, screwed with their brains.
Oh, he totally did.
And
I'm
basically
not sure they
gave them
remember pre-resurrection that well.
Right.
They don't.
And so yeah, they, you know, there's like there's little clues throughout the story, right? Like one of the lines that John says to Augustine in Harrow the Ninth is, if the man that you were heard you say that, you know, like he would have, you know, taken some beef. I don't remember the entire line, but it starts out like, if the man that you were had heard you say that. And like at the time it was like, yeah, that was 10,000 years ago. People change or whatever. But it's very heavily implied that Augustine has no idea what the F he's talking about, you know, that it's just like...
Or he does.
Like, okay,
he might,
you know,
guess that their memories have been taken away, that their bigger shit had happened, because the question that Mercy and Augustine were trying to answer is, what is God afraid of? What is the thing... What is it that the Electo would be able to either tell or give away or in some way do? So they spend 500 years trying to figure that out. But he might guess, because there's a little bit of when Augustine is explaining to Harrow and I think Ianthe that, well, their resurrections happened in stages. And so he was one of the first ones. And then Ketherea came later, like a couple decades later, because she was second generation, as they had described. And there's other people that came to them as they should join the lictors, but there was a few of them that he had resurrected first. But there's no indication that they have memories before the resurrection, and he probably just plucked it from their brains, as he kind of describes. Maybe they can understand a little bit, but if they remembered any of the buildup to the extinction event, they would hold that against him. And that's, he says, like, he's going to take away the memories of everyone on the planet, because anyone's going to be like, but I could have done something. What could we have done? And that they'll be questioning him. It's like, well, it's done with. And to the point when he says, like, what does it matter? Because now it's happened.
right.
So yes, when he says that, like, well, this bomb went off first or that bomb went off first, it's like still to the same point of what does it matter? But one thing that I thought was really funny is that yes, Augustine and Mercy Morn have hated each other for 10,000 years plus, and they rehash the same beef over and over in Harrow of what happened to Alfred or Christabel.
Mm-hmm.
And Augustine seems to blame Christabel for Alfred doing something stupid, presumably dying. And I assume that it means that they had both done some form of kind of suicide pact to force their necromancers to take their lives, similar to what Gideon had done to Harrow at the end of Gideon the Ninth. And if Augustine constantly blames Christabel for it, and even Mercy Morn says, yes, Christabel did this thing, and Alfred just went along with it, you can see that kind of still plays out in the story that John tells in New Zealand, but just with different effects. Because when there's a bunch of people fighting, the first two people dead were Alfred and Christabel. Christabel did it to herself because she was trying to help John find the soul. And Alfred was just the negotiator in the middle that got caught by either side.
Yeah. Yeah. He was trying to negotiate with two groups of armed individuals and got turned into Swiss cheese. So
yeah. And then quickly everyone else dies. But I don't know why. And I assume maybe there's some people of just, he had renamed them as well as resurrected them. Why does he call them A or M or G or P or A's little brother? Or
you ready? Are you ready?
I couldn't remember all the names.
Yeah, because those aren't their names. That's why.
But why not name them back? But why not? Why? It's also so weird. Or you could like
memories. Because he's God and he freaking can. Like, okay, so dude's a narcissist, probably, and an abuser, right? Like, let's cut down to brass tacks. Like, everything is his way at the end of the day. Like, he plays it low, especially when he's going back through his, all of, like, his reminiscing and everything like that. But at the end of the day, right, what he says goes. All of that stuff happens, and then like plug in also the fact that he's willing to rewrite people's memories and stuff like that, right? Like, it's possible that we're missing some details, and I don't know if the details would change anything, right? Like, maybe he tried resurrecting people unchanged and then found out that all they did was scream about how he ended the world, and then it was like, okay, well, let's reboot that one. And then he started chipping away pieces and whatever, right? Let's take the whole, no one's the villain of their own story approach type of thing. And he mostly clearly isn't. But at the end of the day, he ended the world. He wrecked the entire solar system trying to just get these people because they were going to get away with it. That's what, he was mad about at the end of the day. He killed billions of people because a couple of people were going to get away with something he didn't want them to. So, like throwing that in there, like when you've got the unlimited power, it's going to take very little for you to justify these changes, right? Like maybe he hated Augustine's name in the first place, and gave him, because again, like the names that these guys have are so on the nose. It's probably, a post justification for what the author was doing in the first place, right? But it's just another clue of her saying, like, yeah, he picked these names. He picked Augustine and Mercy Morn and whatever because they had meaning to him, versus whatever their original names are. Because like Christabel's another like on the nose kind of example, right? It's just like all of this stuff, but he basically he made himself God Emperor and just rewrote the solar system in his image, and then started trying to do that with the rest of the galaxy. And that's where I think the war is kind of taking place, is that like having the solar system was no longer enough for whatever reason. He's now got to start go murdering and flipping other planets, which I don't think we have even a hint as to why that's a thing, right?
Because he's searching for the ships that got away.
He's still okay. Because I mean, I assumed like Blood of Eden was those people, both. Right?
So Blood of Eden is the descendants of the people who got away, but there's also I think there are ships that like had hibernated and just went, and they're hoping to get lucky, and he's searching for them or something more than that. Because he cannot forgive, even after 10,000 years, the people who left, even though those people are long dead, and so he's gonna drive them out of the known universe.
Which is ironic with the ending of Harrow the Ninth as well, because there was all that about forgiveness and stuff like that, and him saying like, "Oh, I'll forgive you if you just pledge your loyalty to me again," and then getting dropped into the river and that whole thing. But
yeah, he always had the way he presents himself in the John chapters is he needed his group of friends, even though he was the only one with the necromantic abilities. He needed these people to help keep him grounded. And so let's see, Augustine would have been some form of manager, doctor, something between there, because he was trying to help to manage the investors. And Augustine's little brother was a hedge fund manager who eventually says like money is just like a group, his hallucination, man. He's like that kind of hippie kid. M. Mercy Morn was a medical doctor to help with because they're originally trying to put people into cryosleep, that's the word, and then just leave the planet and go to someplace, but they don't know where yet. They don't have things, and they're still trying to figure out if like the percentage of the risks and the maternity, because they couldn't figure out how to turn on a pregnancy after that. And then Gideon was there as his thug, really. I don't know what Gideon's job was.
He just didn't ever question him, right?
Yeah, he was the most loyal.
He was a kid, right? So
they grew up on the same street. So they're probably the same age, because they were like giving mince pies, but he was Gideon was also quite religious. He was raised by grandparents they'd go to church every Sunday and all the best clothes and everything. And Pyrrha was the only other person that Gideon would ever listen to, and she was a cop, detective, Ministry of Defense, and manages some of the legal problems. Cassiopeia would have been a lawyer from England sent to keep things legal as to what they're trying to do with the cryosleep. And Nigella, or N, whatever it was just her best friend that is there, and everyone realizes that they're dating, even though they're not admitting it until way too late. Yeah. And then there's the first corpses that he starts working with when the funding gets pulled and they're no longer able to do the cryosleep trial. They have to dispose of the corpses because now that they've done things to them, they cannot be just like cremated or buried or anything. They've got a bunch of weird chemicals in them. And he doesn't want to.
They start like breaking down most of them, right?
Well, once they pull them out of the labs, like a lot of them do, except for the ones that he cared about, because he was walking around and he felt friends with these dead people because he was getting quite weird. And there was two in particular that he liked the most, and he names them Ulysses and Titania.
That's his Adam and Eve kind of thing vibe.
Sort of, like it was two different genders to try to tell them apart, but they were really close in age. They were born only like 20 days apart from each other. One had died from a broken neck in a car crash. One had died from smoke inhalation. And they were just ones that he was focusing on because they weren't decaying like they should have. Similar to, say, how Gideon's body was not decaying, even though it should have throughout all of Harrow and whatnot. Weird things happening because John liked them. And then after a while, he realized that he could move them. He could know where they had been in the various rooms of their facility, even though they weren't there. And someone like Mercy Moore was saying something like you're just seeing the like psychological effects or the way other people are behaving, until he gets M and A into the room and it says, here's Ulysses and here's Titania. And as he says that, he moves their hands and makes them make fists. And then they start throwing up. And he's clearly able to do shit that's not normal.
Right. It is interesting that he kind of like, you see the progression through his stories, where it's just like it starts out very minor and like, wait, there might be something going on to this, but I mean, as near as we can tell, it's more like him discovering it, right? He doesn't necessarily invent a lot of new ways, right? He doesn't spend a lot of time. He just spends a lot of time experimenting, like, what are my capabilities? Because it's like, oh, it just seems like the ones that I care about don't go. But then we got a bunch of new corpses, and it turns out that I could do stuff with them too. And, new to him anyway, right? They go like exhume 20 more bodies. And then it turns out like, oh, I've got more powers just near corpses, which is weird. And, this like at some point, a couple of chapters in, like he talks about how like they didn't have words for any of this stuff yet, so they weren't calling it thalergy or thanergy or whatever. Just
there was some word that he used that was some form of like death energy thing, but it sounded so comical and cringy. It's like, I think it was Augustine's like, you have to find a better word. We're not calling it that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And that was probably Thanagy or Thermotry.
No, it's it's something similar to that, but it sounded too comical. I have to go find it to find or whatever it was. But because person who can control corpses is quite scary, they started getting unfortunate attention if they were getting any attention from the government. And they weren't getting any attention.
They put themselves out there. Yeah.
Yes. So they started streaming over the internet. And Harrow asked, what is the internet?
See, I did make a paradise. So
exactly.
Create a paradise. But yeah.
But in general.
Yeah, and we got to work in your favorite one. Come on now. So.
Oh, yes. He's going crazy and he's not sleeping. He's not eating. And Mercy Morn says, you're on coke, you're on amphetamines, you're on coke and amphetamines. And he says, yeah, coke 0. That one was definitely my favorite.
These are the books that we're reading. So
I stopped reading and I read that one out loud to my husband and he just like, okay, you can go away now.
Leave me alone, crazy woman. What did I get myself?
He put up with a lot from me.
Yeah. The director walks into the room and she reads this out loud to her husband and he says, who are you and how did you get into my house?
No, he's quite familiar with my stupidities. He just pats me on the head. It's like, it's okay. You can like things. It's okay. Right. So John started streaming over the internet and getting some attention, but getting attention from the weirdos. Particularly, like all the flat earthers and the ones that's conspiracy theorists, because no one else was giving a shit.
The zombie preppers.
The preppers. And then when things were getting a bit chaotic, and they wanted to fortify their compounds, and no one could come in and take the bodies, and they'd like kick them out. Well, they're in New Zealand, and New Zealand has a lot of cattle and sheep. And in the field, there was at least 80 head of cattle over there. In another field, there was a bunch of sheep, and he turned them off and used their corpses, put them in 2 different piles because there's soft bits and hard bits. And then he made a fleshy dome of protection over their facility and with some walls made out of the bones. And at this point, he wasn't able to create new matter, but he was just able to use what was there. But that certainly got attention because people says, what is this flesh monstrosity? And then people like, well, they're talking to him, but they're constantly taunting him, like calling him probably animal abuser, animal rights people are being very mad, even though what he did is probably more kind than, because they were just going to be chopped up into food anyway. So why not?
Concept, though.
Yes,
cows have relationships and look at sunsets.
Did you know cows have best friends, and this is why we're taking away your money? And did you know that they watch sunsets, and this is why you're not getting any help from us? And why don't you just give us all of your people? And did you know that cows have mourning behavior for people? It's the constant taunting of cows. That was quite fun.
Yeah,
and
it's so good.
Yeah, the level of conspiracy is kind of scary of how she puts it together, and it was step by step, and it makes perfect sense of these people. They're doing something weird. They're leaving. All the trillionaires have pulled their money. They're trying to the FDL option, and they say that there are going to be multiple fleets. And Mercy Moore's like, this isn't going to happen. They're leaving. They're scampering. And John says, no, this is fine for at least for a little while. If maybe they're doing something, maybe we can get the attention again. And then someone that leads a nation, a quite powerful nation, is dead before they want him to be.
That's the implication, right?
Yeah.
And
well, and to narrow that field quite a bit, it's a nation that has nuclear capabilities, as we'll find out. So
yes, and so he is helpful to people, and he's going to puppet the body around and say exactly what he's told to say, but he's getting complete access to this body that he's pretending is alive. And in exchange, he's getting a suitcase nuke. And this certainly helps their leverage now that they have such a leverage. But when it does come out that all of the money and the funding and the trillionaires have lied, and they are taking only one fleet of their chosen trillionaires and some corporate slaves to serve them, getting on a couple of ships and leaving, but they're doing it from multiple places. So even though John's ability to control almost everything is extreme, he can't do it from multiple places at once. So he sends Gideon to Melbourne with the suitcase nuke, and then he controls probably the president of the United States as a puppet with all of the suitcase, the nuclear launch codes. I was thinking that because of the launch codes. I thought so. Maybe that's my Americentrism.
Well, and I was thinking Russia because like it seemed like it was definitely. Yeah, like it seemed like it was definitely another country, and for a long time I was just like, maybe it's a smaller country or whatever, until like the end where it's like, you know, he uses dude to like threaten nuclear war, and it's like, it's got to be a big one then. So,
well, I guess some of it was just the familiarity of the structure that she says he went through. He made sure that all the people who knew that it was a puppet was not in the room, and all the people who had the launch codes. And it's just like, well, it's like out of a Tom Clancy movie, so it seemed very American.
Right. Yeah.
But because Blacklist for the past week, so when I was talking about now, I was just imagining like Blacklist kind of setting, which would be America, right? Mostly.
Right. But so there's the showdown going to happen at the facility. There's Gideon that's at Melbourne with the suitcase nuke that he's trying to hand over to be able to whatever, but he's basically betraying them. And Gideon just doesn't question whatsoever. And then he's got the president of someplace that is probably smart that she never named it. And then Gideon's nuke goes off because he's kind of just at his wit's end and he still can't find the soul. And that's when Christabel is like, you can find the soul. And here's how. And she shoots herself in the head with Pyrrha's gun. And he watches the soul hang out and then leave. And then he realizes that the noise that he's trying to see is the whole planet. He can't get any detail through it because it's just too much. And as everyone and all of his friends are dying, and then the nukes start going and on more missiles and more nukes, he does the literal process, but with the entire planet to like take some of that energy inside him. He makes a fake body to then like put it into, and he admits that it was based on the Barbie doll that he had played with when he was a kid, the one that he thought was oh so pretty, and made her look just like that. And then she was the only one with him after everyone else was dead. This is the conversation gets weird because he asks Harrow, do you remember what you said next? And she says, yes. And like, so she's both Harrow and Alecto somehow. And she describes like the short-term history of, okay, so he starts resurrecting some people, tens and hundreds, of it, never more than millions. And they re-expand it back out into the solar system. And then they continue going on, but he keeps the population never more than millions, even though it was clearly 10 billion people who had died on the planet. 10 billion is the number that Kithareya said at the end of Gideon the Ninth of, I am the vengeance of the 10 billion, and the same thing that Wake says and everything else.
We're glossing over a lot of details. Like this is still super high level.
I am breakneck fucking speed over this.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my
God. And this is the B plot, by the way. This is the B plot.
So, yeah. Yes. The B plot was so exciting because we're getting so many information. And then I am a nerd. I really like epigraphs, and every chapter heading of John is chapter and verse notation of the book of John from the Bible. And I, of course, have a table of like, they're the kind of normal things of like, and then the other disciple had reached into the tomb first and also went in and he saw and he believed. It's very on theme of this, of whoever hates me hates my Father as well. Everyone who does the evil hates the light and will not come into the light for fear that their deeds will be exposed. It's all very referential to himself, and it works. But Alecto was quite mad, and Alecto and Nona doesn't remember anything, and she doesn't want to remember anything because she's 6 months old and she realizes that she's dying because the soul that's in the body doesn't match. They are rejecting each other slowly, and she doesn't quite like her body, except for the fact that she's very vain and she thinks it's pretty, but she hates having hands and she hates having her legs and stuff like that. And Pyrrha does know that Nona is Alecto, but Pyrrha's refusing to admit it because Alecto was quite scary to everyone because she was not human. She did not understand. She was quite vicious. And so when Nona has a tantrum, she acts like Alecto, and Pyrrha's just like, oh, I recognize this thing, but I'm completely washing past that, except towards the end when she almost calls Nona Alecto, and Nona says, don't call me that because then I'll remember, and I don't want to remember. And that's when she gets kind of vicious and says, was it fun for you to play family, to play mother and father in this pretend way? And it took me the second time through to realize, like, oh, that's the hint that Pyrrha was about to say, and then that's why Nona had such a personality shift in that moment.
Well,
Yeah,
then plus the ending, right? So
Yes. But
for some reason, apparently that was the key word. So,
yes.
Like,
and even at the end of Harrow, no one wanted to say the name Electo, and so everyone was kind of like responding badly, except Mercy Morn was driving it in because she's a bitch. So Ianthe's on the planet to try to get her sister and everyone on the sixth house. She brings on Cariona Gaia. Cariona is Gideon the Ninth, Gideon of the first book that we love so much and all of her dumb things.
Why
and she knows
everybody have to get new names all the time.
Cariona is the Maori version of the name Gideon.
I don't care.
Jeez.
Stop it.
I Googled it and I found basically Bible translations into Maori of that Cariona is Gideon. So that's it.
That's interesting.
And Cariona is now the acknowledged child and heir to the Emperor Divine John, and running around with Ianthe. And apparently they even have friendship bracelets and secret handshakes and everything. It's so weird that they're like pals. But both of them are dealing with a very despondent John that is in a depressive state of mourning all of his friends, wanting Electo back, maybe wanting to kill her, who knows, and sleeping his way through the core hole, even though he should have learned having children might be a bad thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think this is me, I guess. There's nothing to back this up, especially with how things have kind of shaped out, but it seems like he would have control over that, right? Like,
you'd think so, but he also said that to Augustine and Mercy Morn, and Augustine just said, yeah, but Mercy Morn did it. Mercy Morn figured it out, and John was like, but I didn't even, but Mercy Morn.
Right.
Bit more detail than
I mean, maybe she was able to,
go
she
in
was
there
able to
and
magic them out somehow.
Extract some stuff.
Yeah. But.
Yeah. But he's doing all of the depressive things. And he apparently sent Gideon the Ninth to the planet to get somehow to the tomb to Electo, and the ninth house installation, or the sixth house, sorry, and Gideon and Camilla and Pal have to do a merger thing because the tension that they're putting on the body of Camilla is getting to a point where it can no longer sustain itself, or at least they fear it, that one of them's just going to override the other. But Pal has figured out a different way to be a lictor. Instead of the complete consummation of one of them, they merge.
A merger, right? That's what he always thought was a true lictorhood.
Well, yeah,
his theory anyway from the book.
That's his new theory, because he had figured out the mega theorem of the basic lictorhood, and he didn't like it, and he was never going to do it. But living in the situation that he has as a partial person, he's realized that if they join, then that's a different thing, and so they did. And Camilla and Palamedes merge into one person.
This was a theory of his all the way back from Gideon. It's hinted at that, like, you didn't do the thing. That's not how it's supposed to be done, or something. He sees some greater way of being a lictor all the way back then.
I could believe that he had also figured out that it can be a complete transference, just like the way that John and Electo had. It could be complete swapping of bodies.
And isn't the only reason that worked is because the Earth's soul is too massive for him, so even after he's consumed as much as he possibly could, he has to stuff more into the body of Electo. And then he's so much more powerful now that he can kill all the other lesser life planets and does that.
It could be, but it could also be that it is possible to do an actual transference equally. That it could just have like the souls in different bodies. Maybe that requires swapping bodies entirely, but it could be there's multiple different ways of doing lictorhood.
There's just no,
and he knows that though.
Yeah,
he damn well knows that, and I think that's why Augustine and Mercy Morn are so mad at him. By the way, just to connect those dots.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's just there has to be a death rate for that perpetual energy to be made.
I don't know.
I
don't think
seem
so.
Like it.
Because if the transference is enough, because that's what's hinted at, especially in Nona, that Anastasia figured out that it could be a complete transference. But
she rushed something or something.
That's what John says, but John is a fucking liar. And so there's other people who say that like even Electo at the end, she apologizes for what happened to Samael. And the implication that John had like bumped the process in some way to make sure that it couldn't happen, because if it was acknowledged that it could be a complete transference instead of a partial lictorhood, then everyone else's cavalier who died for nothing could have been saved. And that was the thing that he couldn't let them know, that we learn in Harrow.
Yeah, I mean, because that could be part of it, and then that's where like more of his villainous kind of sets in, is that, you know, Augustine and Mercy Morn were the first. They had to consume theirs, and then somebody came along after that and developed an even better thing, but he couldn't let that happen because, you know, because he'd already kind of shit the bed on that. So
well, he had, they use this phrase multiple times, that he and Electo had watched them fundamentally misunderstand the process, and he didn't stop them from doing it. So yeah, that's the thing, that if that had been found out, then he would be rejected, and he couldn't handle being rejected by his friends. He can't handle being rejected by the Sixth House, because the Sixth House apparently has messages left from Cassiopeia the First, who founded the Sixth House, to leave according to some other thing. And Palamedes, as Master Warden of the Sixth House, initiated that during the time skip.
Literally nobody likes John, apparently. Never.
Well, Harrow still loves John. That's worth something.
Right. Well, Electo in this case. So
both.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Which brings to mind, I haven't seen the movie, only like a recap of it, of the movie Mother, that's supposed to be Earth, and how we mistreat Earth, and how she keeps loving the people that are mistreating her anyway in this movie. It's like a whole thing.
Well, we need to end on time today, so I'm going to try to get to the very exciting ending. In the middle of a lot of shit happening, Nona and Pyrrha and Cariona and the messenger, who I have not spoken to of whatsoever, is very confusing, but AIM is the messenger, AIM, and she has a predecessor named Emma Sen, MSN. Missed that one on the first time. But
Same. I just got it now. Motherfucker.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. But the angel has an angel, the messenger, whatever, the same person, same plurality somehow. They're the owner of Noodle. And Paul, which is Camilla and Palamedes' new name after they merge into one person, and they are perfectly capable of doing necromancy, but their memories are kind of split, and they choose the name Paul, and Gideon the Ninth says, Alp. Nope, just Paul. And then Ianthe later calls him Sext, which I thought was funnier. They
obviously their name should have been Calamities, by the way. So just saying it, but
someone better tell that to them in the next book.
Yeah.
That would have been great. They get on a mega truck that was carrying the Sixth House around somewhere. They get into the river. The river is different, and Gideon the Ninth have been trying to tell them, like, it's different. It's not normal. Whatever it was, because Pierce keeps saying, but we're just going to be burned up and eaten. But as Nona describes it, the water doesn't want to touch them, and so neither are any of the monsters trying to touch them. And they see a gigantic tower that's like taller than the 30-story building that they were living in. It's extremely tall.
Which we also saw in the visions, I'm pretty sure, at the end.
Maybe. And well, it's weird that Cariona and Ianthe are both called Tower Princes now. And by the way, I'm skipping over a great duel scene between Camilla and Naberius and Ianthe. And
I mean, we're skipping so loud. How? Yeah.
Oh my God, yes.
On. Yes. Come on.
Like, I had to realize that after reading that whole thing, I was in mourning for those characters.
Yeah.
Go loud, man. Right. But the tower is important because Harrow, talking to John, sees the tower, and I'm going to go looking for why she was so angry, she says to him. And she sees the tower, and she says, I'm going to start right there. And she goes into the tower. And then Nona sees the tower, and something or other, she doesn't want to go anywhere. She's just like, how about we all just die together? Because she's dying, and now that she knows it and admits it, it's kind of easy. And she doesn't want anyone to leave unnecessarily or be left behind. And it was so nice for Cam and Pal to leave her with Paul, but she misses them too. And then Paul says, but Noodle is in the back. And she says, oh my God, I forgot about Noodle. And then they have to, they get to the ninth house.
She has her priorities straight. I respect the character.
Right.
And it's so consistent to her character too. They get to the ninth house, and they wander through it.
With
And the
a
ninth house,
precision unheard of,
Mhm.
right? That's like a little detail.
Oh yeah, there was another conversation too. Yeah. Okay. They're at the ninth house. They're trying to get into the tomb, and all the people of the ninth house, even with the newly resurrected sacred dead, whatever, they are under attack by the monsters that was the thing that killed Dr. Kizron in Gideon the Ninth. And they've got weird markings on their face, and there's also the thing that have been fighting at a place called Antioch that we don't get to see.
This is the actual real enemy that the cohort is made for.
Apparently, whatever that is, no one knows, or at least we haven't described, but Gideon the Ninth is saying, like, this is the thing, they shouldn't be here, and we should have gotten word that they were here. And Crux is there, and Crux is all crotchety, and to get into the tomb, they need Gideon the Ninth's blood, but Gideon has been necromantically fortified, and nothing can really kill her or hurt her or get her blood, even though she's also mega dead. And they also need a fresh Thanergy. So Crux is going to die for his beloved Lady Harrowhark. And though Aglamene was going to be the one to do it, Gideon's like, no, I'll do it. I've been wanting to do this for years. And did you know that all the time that you were mistreating me, you were mistreating the Emperor's daughter? And he says, like, you are as you were born, you were made to make my lady suffer or something. And Gideon kills him. And she says, why didn't it feel good? How the fuck did that not feel good?
Just her total breakdown is fantastic. You know, there's so many good lines and characterizations in this book for that, but
skipping over so many too. They get into the tomb, and Paul makes a comment of like, these were a lot of traps, and they were fantastically neatly undone. And then Nona is like swimming through the salt water to get to the tomb, and it's kind of like a sense of gravity because the soul is trying to get back to its body. And then she says, happy birthday to me, and falls over dead. And then we get an epilogue in Alecto's perspective, not Nona, Alecto. And Harrow is there, and she's in her body again, and she wakes up. And Alecto also sees that there was the body of Anastasia in the corner where they had left her. And she feels so much sorrow. Anastasia's a skeleton, I guess, because she was the tomb keeper. But then like there's an argument between Ianthe and Gideon.
She's the one who founded the ninth house, right?
Yes, she founded the house for the tomb.
Yeah.
And
she's been there as a skeleton, necromantically kept alive ever since. She was actually conscious. I don't think
Anastasia's alive. Yeah. I think she's just a corpse or a skeleton.
Yeah. Okay. But I got the impression that she said something or something like that, and I was like, wait, has she been there all that time guarding the tomb?
Well,
no, I think it was Alecto. Yeah.
No, there's pieces here. So like Silas Dr. Kizron is saying in Gideon that they were supposed to go, and then they were supposed to die, and they didn't die. And Harrow's parents were willing to commit genocide on 200 children to make sure that she was born alive, because what they had to do more than anything was keep the line of the tomb keeper intact, the line of Anastasia. And Alecto sees Harrow and recognizes her face from the dream, and kisses her or something. But Harrow starts bleeding, and Alecto's confused. He's like, why do you react like this way? This is how meat loves meat. But she tastes the blood, and she realizes this is blood of Anastasia. This is the line of the tomb keeper. It is still intact. And she apologizes to Harrow for, I'm so sorry what happened to Samael. And Alecto tries to swear herself as being the cavalier of Harrow, I will respect the oath given a long time ago. Anything you want, I will do until you throw me away. And Gideon says, get in line, thou big slut. It's great. And then let's see. Alecto sometime later has the body of, I think, Harrow over her shoulder, and she finds John in a truck, and he's drunk, he's unshaven, I think he's just basically woken up, and she stabs him through the heart. And then he says, oh, Annabelle, where have you been? That's the end of the book.
Yeah.
So much I skipped over.
And now we got to wait like a year at a minimum for the second half, and it really is fantastic, but it's also confusing and frustrating, just like the other two books have been. You know, like we skip over like the first
so
third
much
is
more
like,
linear.
Yeah, sure, but yeah, we skip over like a third of it. Like, let's meet her friends, and then every other chapter almost we've got John's perspective, and then finally we start getting some traction with the transmission, right? And then that's where the story kind of really kicks off, in my opinion. But
Yeah.
The whole AIM MSN thing, I never really got. I guess I don't know if it's hinted enough that you figured it out or people on the internet figured it out, but I didn't. She was
Internet.
altered in some way. She's important to the Garden of Eden, but I don't like the. I don't know why.
Yeah, she
we
has
don't know
a
what the
message,
message is. Yeah,
but she's some form of duality because like the angel is well, at least the body of a woman being a teacher to kids because that's how she's getting a lot of fulfillment in her life. But they also, the blood of Eden also refers to her as a they because she is more than one in some fashion. It's so very weird, and we'll find out at some point. One of the best parts of this book, though, was the amount of Palamides that we got to have. Camilla and Palamides and Pyrrha, they're very entertaining.
Yeah, great. They were great. Like I'm more attached to Palamides, Camilla, and even Pyrrha than I am to Harrow and Gideon.
I would just like them all back again. Yeah, I had seen something of what Tamsin had said in an interview of like, how can you describe Electo, the book forthcoming, with like the most wrongest way possible? And she says some form of like, there's going to be a lot of dress up parties, and I'm very confused. But all I can think of is that when Ianthe and Harrow had to dress for dinner and then bad things happen on the Mithraeum, there's going to be some form of crazy parties and everyone's going to have to pretend to like each other in negotiation and then necromantic in the background stuff.
I'm thinking like body swapping.
That's a possibility.
Yeah.
There was quite a lot of that in puppeteering.
Yeah. Please no more new names for the same character. Please. How many names have Gideon had by now? Even like...
Well, she has a few titles now. She's one of the Tower Princes. And I mean, Ianthe got a couple more, being Naberius also, Ianthe Naberius, and she was puppeting Naberius's body. And I don't know, the sassiness between her and Corona when they started talking. It's like, he needs to have his hair done pompadour. He doesn't look good in white. You're doing horrible things to his body.
Yeah, the pump has like a guy who was a hairstyle didn't get how it was, but I thought it was funny. Like, oh, he's dead. She killed him, and everything. But what's important here is she hasn't done his hair right, and using him as a puppet. And
they calling Corona a like ill shampooed girl, or like you really need to get your hair cut, and the cosmetic sassiness between the two is very entertaining.
Yeah, I found this book way more enjoyable than Harrow. Gideon and Nona are both better than Harrow because the second person thing just didn't vibe with me, I guess.
I'm still amazed. Like, it did not bother me almost at all. Like, it took a little bit of an adjustment, but all of like maybe half an hour's worth of reading, and then it's just it's not doing anything unique in the U except for the fact that U is Harrow. It wasn't trying to make a weirder idea of myself being in the story.
There's another book that's book series that's quite popular that starts in second person called the Broken Earth trilogy. I think it is. Maybe that's for you. I don't know.
I think I'm going to have other issues with that series. Well, see, that's the one that comes to mind. Is I think people had said one, it was very confusing with the second person because you don't know who that second person is referring to until you figure it out somewhere in the story. But I think there's other reasons that I might not enjoy that. I don't know if I would.
I don't know. Yeah. So yeah, what are we doing next while we weren't recording? Is that the spooky movies?
Yes, spooky movies. And I don't know if anyone's actually made up a list yet, but we've got 2 weeks and now I got to start watching things, but I need to I don't even know what my own spooky movies are.
Yeah, we could just do one movie and stuff too.
Maybe, but I don't that doesn't solve the problem of I need to choose and I can't choose. There's so many spooky.
Yeah. Okay, well, I should probably fill that list out.
Yeah, everyone should. I'm going to have to put a reminder. So tune in 2 weeks we discuss whatever spooky movies to be determined. And next week is Dresden of also to be determined.
Maybe we can once we have the movies, or as they come in, maybe we could post them on Discord for the Discord followers. And if you want to follow us on Discord, you can go to patreon.com and pay to follow us, and you get the list. You can watch it, and then you can be in the loop when we talk about them.
You can pre-watch them as well, and then join in the discussions and tell us all that Ben is wrong,
as he often is.
Yes,
except when he agrees with me. But other than that,
somehow he's a man alone with very little agreement with others.
True.
Well, thank you everyone for listening to my crazy ramblings of the crazy book.